Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to Truthseekers. I began some time ago to sort of change my attitude towards experiencers, and we've invited a few to be on our show. And so far, we did this interview with a former police officer who had reptilian alien experiences. In the description box, you can hear my first interview. You know, the subject of reptilian aliens or even humanoids fascinates me. And the earliest mention of reptilian humanoids I was ever able to find was a 1929 Weird Tales magazine story that talked about a race of nearly extinct reptilian humanoids that secretly ruled the planet Earth. In later years, reptilian humanoids and aliens started appearing in horror movies and science fiction movies and books, in Star Trek and later television shows like V, The Final Battle, and of course in Star Wars there were some reptilian races. Interestingly, in the 1990s, conspiracy theorist David Icke would popularize the conspiracy theory that shape-shifting reptilian aliens and their hybrid offspring were actually controlling the Earth. Gee, exactly like that Weird Tales magazine story from 1929. In recent years, however, I have become aware of and been in communication with alien experiencers who claim to have had contact with, been abducted by, or interacted with reptilian aliens. Our guest tonight is one of those people. In the description box of this video, you can find a link to my first interview with Matt where he recounted his experiences with reptilian aliens. Since that first interview, many people have asked me if I believe him. To be honest, I'm not sure what to believe. But what I will say is that Matt is just sharing an experience that he believes to be real. He's not out there selling books, his latest documentary, or latest course on how to ascend. He hasn't profited at all from his story. Mostly, what I see of this guest tonight is I see him researching these topics kind of obsessively. Something that I can definitely find sympathy for, right? And you know, it makes me think that perhaps he's so obsessive in his research of these topics to try to fully understand what it is that actually happened to him. What I do find fascinating is the number of people who have reported similar experiences to his or other experiences involving reptilian aliens. If these people's experiences are not real, then what is it that's causing people's perceptions to tell them that they're seeing reptilian humanoids or aliens? If they're all wrong, then what is the answer to, you know, then what is the answer to the mystery of what is causing these experiences for so many people? And I believe that that alone is a great mystery. And we all know I do love a great mystery, and I hope you do too. So I want to welcome Matt to Truth Seekers. How you doing tonight, Matt?
Doing okay.
Okay, and for those unaware, Matt is on the phone with us here. I'm going to put up a banner about that. I forgot. Bad show host, Matt. So I know that you've been trying to find, you've been sending me some links of things that you've been finding that are related or may be related to your own experiences. Can you talk a little bit about that and sort of give us an update from where we left off last time?
Yeah, I mean, just one thing as far as, I wouldn't say I obsess, like, I research this that much. You look at my YouTube history, it's all like history documentaries, true crime documentaries, science documentaries. Maybe 1 out of 30 or 40 videos is like anything on aliens or reptilians. But I do, try to keep abreast of the situation. If I see an article, fan of the Monsters blog, by the way, I got to give a shout out to them because it's a really good research blog. It's where I wrote my first article about my, the first time I publicly revealed my abductions back in like 2010, 2011, even though, it started happening back in 2003. And it's as far as updating, picking up where we left off from the last video, just real quick, even for people who don't kind of look at the description. Yeah, I was on the police during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. I was there for 2 years. I'm currently 43. I was part of this project to help train reptilian aliens in crowd control, sort of a joint military alien project. And that's a very, watch the other video for context, because I'm not going to retread too much of it here, because, people, if they want to find out, they can go get the context. It would be very helpful, though. So don't watch part 2 before part 1, or it's going to be, like trying to watch Breaking Bad from like season 4 on, There's a lot of similarities to Breaking Bad, anyways. But moving on, as far as updates I've sent you, one of the first is, I know this will be a bit controversial, is from Richard Dolan's new book, Alien Agendas. But the passage is from another person's book. It's about a Marine in the 1960s named Ramon, I believe. And Dolan's talked about, if you watch any of Dolan's interviews the last, 6 months, he talks about this case where this Marine in the 60s testified that he was brought out to this hangar with him and several other Marines. And they brought out these reptilians, and there was, doctors and Marine officers in this hangar. And, they marched these reptilians. They clearly practiced giving these reptilians drill formation and marched them out. And these Marines had to stand there at attention while these reptilians were marched in front of them. And what really fascinating, there's a lot of similar elements, but the detail that caught me was how he described their uniforms. That sort of dark green, that color, that dark green color, just plain, no camo or anything. The only difference being in the 1960s, they had a badge of like the dragon symbol, served their home race symbol. And in my situation in 2005, during that crowd control training induction, they had no patches whatsoever. And that makes sense, because at the time, this was, the first stages of reptilians and the military kind of, testing things and doing these test drills. Later on, the military would say, look, we're not going to let you wear, dragon, snake, whatever badges if you're going to be doing crowd control. I get this, the history and everything, but it's, that's a bit too much. Maybe later on. But that one detail he got on the uniform color and what they look like, I thought that was very
because it matched your experience then, right?
Yeah, that one detail. The other detail, the military and reptilians and marching around in drill formation, that matched it too. But that detail of the uniform, that really kind of caught me. Because I remember that even from my experience, the uniform looks so plain, there's no camo, it's dark green, but that makes sense too, because if you put them in a muddy environment or a dark forest, it looks so similar to the rest of their scales, to their dark brown scales, that I get it, but it would almost be like a human wearing a flesh-colored camo. It blended together color-wise too much almost. It was but I guess you want that. That's why you look like Navy SEAL training. They always have them roll in the mud, keep going back, roll in the mud again. Reptilians look like that naturally, or at least the warrior caste types do, when they got these uniforms on, their scales, and they don't even have to roll in the mud. So they skip an important step, I guess you could say. But not to, I know, Dolan, and you've got problems if some Dolan is done in terms of research, but this is actually from another book. If you look at those pages,
no, it's okay. It's okay because I looked into what you sent me and I saw the source of it. So, but Dolan's repeating it. I don't really have that big a problem with Dolan. I just think that he's off in the woo land. He's got to keep coming up. He's got to keep coming up with something to sell.
I read his new ebook, and I gotta tell you, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good in the sense that it doesn't do this cardinal sin that almost every other researcher and guru does, which is they fixate and say, okay, everything's the Greys, they're the ones in charge, everything's the Nordics, everything's humans, everything's time travelers, everything's demons. It's like so many of these guys, they have this idea in their head of this is the important race and the other ones don't matter. Yeah, there's other races, but a magic savior race is going to come in like OxyClean and just clean out all the bad guys.
Yeah.
And
they always have good guys and bad guys, and they're always the good guys. That's something I've noticed. They're the Galactic Light Council representative, and they're fighting the Dark Fleet or the Dark alliance or something. Yeah.
Well, the first guy to do that was, you could see videos of Alex Collier and the Andromedans, the 5D Blue Andromedans, back like in the 90s. He's all over on the UFO circuit. They're going to come clear out the bad reptilians from the underground tunnels who are eating kids. The same thing we're hearing nowadays with the light system and the
we just covered that yesterday. That's the land of make-believe of Jason Sherkill. And I found it interesting that he basically just repeats everything from Conspiracy Land that he thinks will get him an audience,
I think he might really believe, I think he might have been really contacted, possibly even by some people who really are hybrids. Maybe they even show him some of their abilities, but at the same time, I think he might be, being used by them and being given carefully filtered information a narrative that they want people to know.
Or he's just a con artist, profiteer. Those are the two choices.
Yeah. I mean, the appetite for money in UFO land, the mansions, the first class tickets.
Hey, I'm just trying to make Taco Bell wages, Matt. That's what I'm asking for. And sometimes we don't even do that. Sometimes we don't even do that. It depends.
Man, Taco Bell all throughout college had saved me in terms of my budget. That and Wendy's. Like I used to walk. I went to Columbia College in Chicago, and I'd walk an almost like full mile out of my way to go to Wendy's or Taco Bell because McDonald's and Burger King were more expensive. But Taco Bell. Quite a lifesaver back then. I mean, now I can cook more.
Well, I just mean you're right. Like we covered recently that Stephen Greer got $400,000 basically to make a film trashing all of his competition and put ads all over it for his app. Like it's just you're right, but it seems like a pyramid scheme. Like the guys at the top are making millions, and then the people at the bottom who aren't telling fantastical fairy tales, trying to do things more ethically, are making pennies.
Yeah, and a lot of I don't mean to. I'm not going to say anything negative about MUFON, but part of the structure when I've gone to MUFON meetings, talked about my story, me and other experiencers, the way it works is you have the usual gurus, the big guys give a talk for 2-3 hours, and you'll watch some documentary from the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, and then actual abductees and experiencers, we come in at the very, very end for 20 minutes. No matter what experience we have, there's big abduction and evidence and cuts and bruises and pick doesn't matter. It gets all pushed to the end. And they even do that same pattern on Ancient Aliens, where whenever, they had a couple episodes of Reptilians, and they'll have one reptilian abductee, and they get to talk for 4 minutes at the end, some bad CGI. And then they bring on the guy with the big hair, and he talks for half an hour. It's like this throughout ufology, and even like the Sierra Bell days, where they had this rotating discography of the same gurus. The Gordon Michael Scallions and who's the guy that's in federal prison?
Sean David Morton.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, I remember.
I mean it's. And Ed Dames, and my God, all the disasters these guys would predict, the solar flares and the earthquakes and California falling into the sea, and John Titor, and it's their accuracy rate sure has not improved since then. But
I think that things have gotten more fantastical and worse, actually.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you get positive, open-ended stories, you can never be wrong. It's the good things are happening underground, good things, the bad guys.
The Space Brothers are going to save us from the solar flares. Yeah, that's another common rift too, the Space Brothers. What do you think of this? What do you think of this current rift and argument in I guess the world of UFOs and alien? You've got pretty much one side pushing this threat narrative, and then you've got the other side saying all extraterrestrials are benevolent, which I think both, I don't think things are that black and white, but okay. But what do you think of this, especially having experience, if you truly did experience these reptilian aliens, would you consider them benevolent?
No, I would definitely say the alien experiences I have were definitely neutral. I definitely can't say good, evil. I mean, I can't put them on any different moral standard than humans, or moral, wavelength, or deviation pattern. And I think it's probably true with all intelligent beings throughout the universe. You can have certain levels of crime, certain levels of malfeasance, like cattle mutilations, which are really theft of certain parts of the animal, and that's what it is, theft. I remember on Benevolent house site, there was a guy in Scotland or northern England, and his neighbor was having livestock stolen by some greys in a ship, and he could see. They opened up the window, he could see they were greys, and he's yelling at them to put the neighbor's cows back. And the greys these two greys, they see him, and they start pointing, and they're like pointing to each other, and they're waving, and they're like smiling at him. And he's like, put my neighbor's livestock back, and they think he's just waving hi to them, or just happy to see them or something. And it's like, were they in a malicious state? Were they thinking? No, they're thinking that, here we are taking these cattle tissues, and look, there's a neighbor. He must be excited to see a UFO. He's happy to see us. Let's get more people who won't wave at him. And it's like, so aliens can commit malicious actions, and not necessarily, but they can commit negative actions without being just filled with evil or filled with malice. It can just be, a lot of crimes on Earth are committed by people who are, necessarily severely evil. It's just, crimes of opportunity, crimes of
hunger.
The Milgram experiment. The Milgram experiment is a great example. You remember? Have you seen documentaries on it? You've probably heard about it, where you sit someone down, and a scientist tells them to keep hitting a shock button on a person in the other room.
Yeah, I've read all about this study. Yeah, crazy that people would, but they did.
And I think a lot of aliens are probably in the same situation. They're not, when they're doing abductions or doing cattle mutilations or anything else, it's their boss is telling them to do it. They're giving some kind of justification, and they don't in their head think that they're doing something evil or necessarily negative. There is a great, I follow on Twitter the Confessionals podcast, which is another really, they have lots of abductees and experiencers on there. And one guy was this college professor, had this group abduction, him and a whole bunch of other people, and they were camping in the late 70s. And at one point during the abduction, this mantis alien just gets really pissed, gets really irritated because the person on the table is screaming. And he's like, why do you people always scream? We don't hurt you. We always put you back. And this is the late 70s. We didn't know that. Even now, people, every time there's a missing person, well, maybe an alien took them, or maybe they're in mass taking people. So I think, sometimes we do, there's a negative spin or a negative bias where we presume they're always doing something wrong. But in most cases, if you're abducted, that's absolutely true. You're not going to get hurt. If anything, if they find a health problem like a tumor or something they can take out, they will. And there's lots of cases of people just in one abduction having some kind of health problem that they had before the abduction, and the aliens see that and go, we can fix this, and they fix it while they're there. And so again, the more what's going on here in terms of morality, I really wouldn't easily put it in the category of good or evil. I get the alien perspective too, that human medical technology is so far behind that, you got to help these natives. Their technology is, it's. I can see the justification on that because their technology is pretty far behind. I don't think their technology is as far ahead as people who are engaging in what I would call mail fraud, like Ward and Parks and these guys promising med beds. Because even in most alien abductions...
Yeah, med beds or other assorted snake oils. They've all got, I think Simon Parks was in on that sticker thing you put on your phone,
Oh, God.
A total scam that does nothing. It's just a sticker. Or was it the USB thing? There was a USB thing, too. That was... Somebody bought it for like $300, and it turns out it's just a USB. It's just a Chinese $2 USB stick that does nothing.
And here's the thing. If you look at actual abductions, there are no med beds. They have to get out like a laser scalpel. It doesn't matter if it's reptilians, great. their technology is more advanced, but it's not like, okay, stick the empathy in that rotisserie chicken med bed there, press the button, and we'll come back and it'll be healed. I have not seen that in my experiences, other people's experiences. So
yeah,
so
we covered this. Sarah or Adam. She's selling medbed sessions for $250, and then they say that they're going to take you through a Stargate up to a spaceship. But then in the same text at the end, they admit that it's just a Zoom call. $250 Zoom call medbed session.
It's beyond even what the aliens even have. They don't do medical procedures that way. So it's like you're telling me you guys have technology beyond what you see in it's better than what they have during an abduction. That's just insane. It's better than that. You get abducted, tell them, hey, have you guys tried med beds? They laser scalpel, all the stuff you're doing at pools. No, just like that GIF I sent you on Twitter. It's like the Ron Popeil, set it and forget it rotisserie chicken thing. Just stick them in there. Yeah. And they're healed. And it's like, they got this, where I think one of the things they got this from that movie Elysium, which is a good movie. Mind you, it's a good sci-fi movie. It's from the guy who did District 9. Mm-hmm. And in it, the elites, they all live on, they've got this paradise space station and they have med beds.
Yeah, I think it's a great movie, actually.
But yeah, I like it. I like that movie a lot just because, the gap between the rich and poor is, I think that's going to be very accurate depiction in the future, unfortunately. But and that's a very sad thing. But I think that's where. Oh, and speaking of movies, you may have seen me talk about this on Twitter and let you know that there's this new movie came out about a week ago called the Tomorrow War. It's a big budget movie. It was supposed to be in theaters, but Amazon bought it for like $200 million. Got Chris Pratt. But what's funny is, this is really going to be a problem for a certain Corey.
Yeah, he's gonna have to sue them. That's his trademark, right?
Because the characters are drafted to fight in the future. And it's even like, 30 years, and then you come back after you serve your tour, and I don't know how he's going to sell his film when that just came out. I don't. That is a problem. But the interesting part is. And, okay, spoiler, I'll give you like 3 seconds to beat this if you want to hear spoiler, but the main enemy they're fighting basically is conceptually the same thing I spoke about in the last abduction, which is these engineered rake chupacabra type beings that were like designed to be weapons or, born to be weapons, basically.
Kind of like the original Alien movie. Those things were engineered.
Yeah, that's the concept of xenomorphs too. Is that they were designed as weapons, and the same, and that kind of thing, from my experience, really is going on. Although the movie did a good job of showing how intelligent those beings are as well. And I thought that was clever. It's not a bad movie. The Tomorrow War is not a bad movie. It's not Citizen Kane, but it's definitely a 3-star. It's a 3-star movie. It's funny. What's that new Zack Snyder film with zombies and Dave Bautista?
Yeah,
it's on Netflix.
I saw it, but I can't think of the title either. And I don't mind a 3-star movie about science fiction. I mean, after all, sometimes when I'm really bored and have nothing to do, I watch old 80s science fiction movies. The ones that were on like Saturday television. The sort of low budget. It's always like.
Oh, yeah, you should get Shudder, the Shudder streaming service. It's like, it's like $6 a month, but they have so many 80s. Like,
I would probably enjoy that. I think I'm going to rewatch V soon, though. I got a box set of V, and I think I'm going to watch the whole V. That's on my list here.
Yeah. Here's the thing. They did a reboot of V in like 2009 that lasted 2 seasons. It wasn't great, but that was something in terms of the series. I mean, as far as basis in reality, I mean, the reptilians have like artificial skin. No, but conceptually, the hybrids fitting in, yes. And I think one thing we covered last time, I definitely need to reiterate it. When you talk about gray hybrids and reptilian hybrids do blend in better, but only because mentally humans and reptilians are closer than humans and grays. There isn't as much of a gap in terms of our mentality. And part of that is because our sort of caveman ancestors are pretty damn similar. They were pack hunting carnivores, and we were pack hunting carnivores. And that's, for example, why do we get along so well with dogs? Why, we understand each other's body language. You can just look at a dog, they can know what you're thinking by your facial expression. Same basic, we have the same sort of energy. Even though if you look at a dog and look at a human, it's clear we came, we're not evolutionarily that close, but we have that same sort of mentality. And
well, we do still have the lowest portion of our brain is still the reptilian brain. We still have that as part of our physiology.
Jason,
and that controls base functions of things like breathing, heart rate, things like that. It's like lower functions, not thought processes, but it's still control mechanism, and that's carried over through evolution from reptiles into us.
Well, the best, the best sort of representation of reptilians would be something more like the velociraptor. That doesn't, it's obviously extinct now, but that would be, or in the reptile, alligators, crocodiles. You see some people who've trained alligators very, very well, like as well as you could train dogs. As professional, well-known people have done that. But also there's this one breed of lizard, the tegu lizard, which you actually look online, YouTube, and they play fetch and they do all these same. Reptiles can be pretty damn intelligent, even though the brain system is a bit simpler. But they're just more streamlined. For example, insectoid aliens, mantises, graves, arguably their brains are quote unquote even simpler than reptiles or humans, but they're very intelligent. So you can, intelligence and how streamlined the system is. Those two things, they're not necessarily exclusive. You don't have to be a mammal to be intelligent. You can evolve to a certain point.
Sure, I seem to remember seeing there's a graphical depiction that a bunch of anthropologists made of what a reptilian humanoid that descended from dinosaurs might look like. That's kind of interesting too, because if they had not, if the asteroid hadn't come along, they might have ended up looking a lot like us, but reptilian.
Yeah, the Dinosaurid, you could find they even have CGI makeup type depictions of that. You look it up on YouTube. What would they look like if they were still alive today and mixed into society? And the answer is not. Skin texture and everything, different, but not as different as you think. They actually on the new Star Trek series, Star Trek Discovery, they have a reptilian character on there who's clearly based on a Dinosaurid. And they spend a lot of money on the CGI.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen. I found this. Yeah, I remember reading about this.
Yeah, if you look up Linus, Star Trek Discovery Linus, like Linus from Snoopy, that's the Dinosaurid character they have on there. And you can tell, they spent a pretty penny animating him too, and having the eyes blink and whatnot. But getting at the point, just mentally, they're pretty similar to us. They're a little more aggressive, a little more territorial, but the gulf between us and the Greys mentally is much greater for a couple of reasons. One reason is they come from a substantially older star. It's not that their star is about to die necessarily. Stars can go on a long time, but Zeta Reticuli, it's older than our sun, substantially. And then they also come from a hive-like insect heritage. Some Native Americans call Greys ant people, and that's a great description. We should call it, that's probably the best description. And because of that, when they make hybrids, and you see this with men in black type gray hybrids people have encountered who are clearly gray, half gray, half human, and very awkward. It's just their mentality. They have very little aggression. They don't respond to aggression well at all. They back down just way too easily. And you see this when they're working also during abductions with human military and working with reptilians or even Nordics. Any kind of conflict, they're like, whatever, we'll just do, okay. They'll go along with it because even early on in their formation or their caveman level, they were just probably like dog-sized ants or something, and they're so focused on being cooperative and everyone working together and everyone, they don't have that same mentality that, early reptilians and early humans have. And, to a certain extent, humans, reptilians, wherever we were in our caveman state, we didn't get that far away from it. Once you get some and start making spears and start making, tents out of animal skin and start making rockets, it's kind of get frozen in time. But by the time the Greys got to that point, look at ants, look at bees, look at wasps, the way they behave is so organized, so thinking of the society before they think of themselves. And that's one of the reasons Greys come off. So people think they're being disingenuous or fake, or they're just, but no, they're really like that. They're very selfless in just their culture, but that's natural to being, a high white buck. That doesn't, it's not some virtue. It's just natural to them. So
what I was going to ask you then, do you think that if reptilian aliens are real, do you think that on their planet they had something like dinosaurs, or that the same kind of a situation that we did in our distant past, and they just didn't get the asteroid, so the reptiles there evolved into a bipedal intelligent species eventually?
Yeah, I mean, if we hadn't got hit by the asteroid, we would be another reptilian planet, essentially. So yeah, it's that kind of situation. But also, whatever dinosaur on their planet became the dominant two-legged, with thumbs being, it quickly got all the other ones in the farms and zoos, and the population of the rest probably dropped pretty fast, just like on Earth. Once we start figuring out, hey, I can take a stick and I can poke animals with it, the rest of nature just got run over. They couldn't respond to it. It's like, I mean, that's pretty much the story probably around the universe. The first animal to figure out you can pick up a stick and then rub it against a rock and then poke things with it is like just, that's hard to beat. It's laughably simple, but it's
funny how much this dinosauroid made by actual anthropologists looks like the slee stack from Land of the Lost. Remember that? You ever see that when you were a kid?
That's a little before my time in the 80s, but it's funny as far as culture and depicting reptilian humanoids. There's been such an explosion of that in modern games like Mass Effect and Skyrim and all these movies and TV shows. I was impressed, the Conan O'Brien TV production show, they made a sitcom, 2 seasons called People of Earth. I think it was on TBS, and then it went somewhere else.
Yeah, it was about people. It was about people going to UFO conferences and stuff, right?
It had reptilians, it had Greys, it had Nordics. I mean, they did the research. They even did the research on screen memories, how aliens would take you into this room on the ship and sit you in the front seat and look like a car, and then drug you and make you think you got in a car accident. Whoever wrote that actually sat there and did research before they wrote it, which is better than the X-Files in its prime, which was just making up the most ridiculous stuff that had nothing to do with abductions, nothing to do with anything reported. And to this day, that's where you get the black goo. All this AI black goo stuff that came from the X-Files.
Yeah, that was an episode of X-Files. I always thought that was funny. And basically, I know of at least 2 or maybe 3 people that took that AI, the AI black goo from the X-Files, and then they used portions of Wolverine Origins when he was in the tank, and they injected him with the adamantium thing. They mixed the 2 of them up for their superhero origin stories.
Well, I mean, I've had, like I talked about in my last experience, I've had my lab experiences where I was worked on, but certainly there was no black goo or Texas tea or black gold. But I actually, I have a lifetime of color blindness, color deficit, mild color blindness. And like a lot of people, I didn't find out until my early 20s, and you get a colorblind test trying to bond the police, and you're like, how can I be colorblind? And a lot of colorblind people say the same thing, the ones who are mildly colorblind, because you don't notice because you can see the whole rainbow of colors. They're just dull. And then, a couple of years ago, suddenly I'm seeing colors totally differently. And I'm really sensitive to light. But of course, I lean pretty skeptical despite my abductions, so I convinced myself, you know what? With maturity, I'm probably just appreciating color more. I'm becoming a more mature adult, so I just appreciate it more. And then finally I go to the doctor because I'm getting this horrible pink eye. And ever since then, by the way, I get pink eye twice a year now, thanks to whatever they did to my eyes. And I find out, they give me, I get the full America's Best eye health checkup. It's like another $60 or $70 for all these tests. And they give me the color vision test. I'm like, I don't need to take this. Like, I already tell you I'm partially colorblind. And I pass it. I got like a 95 or whatever. Something around 90. And like before, I get like a 30% every time. I'm like, okay, you must have given me the test wrong. I'll go home. I'll do it again. I'll find out. And I'm like, holy crap, this would explain why I was seeing colors more vividly. It's not because I'm more mature and, just more sophisticated with age. I literally, my eyes were altered by whatever treatment they gave me. And as far as you talked at the beginning of the show, doing research, DARPA has outright said, there's articles, they want to do things like see if they can give soldiers cat DNA for their eyes to give them natural night vision, or genetically alter soldiers' eyes. And I sent you an article. Actually, look this up. There's something that just came out a couple weeks ago, which is pretty soon there'll be a superhero vaccine. Alex Jones just, had a meltdown about this, where you go to CVS and within a few years, and they inject you, and it gives you athlete DNA for your heart, athlete DNA for different parts of your body. And it's like, okay.
Well, I did read something about this, but I don't know, how, is this a real thing? I mean, it's supposed to be, and they're talking about it, but it doesn't mean it's, ready to roll out, right? But I've heard mention of things like this, just like I've heard mention of people getting blood transfusions from young people when they're old. Like old rich people will get blood transfusions from young, healthy people. And I don't think that's a conspiracy theory because I think that's for real. I don't know about this other thing yet, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Thiel, he's got his they made fun of it in Silicon Valley, that he actively wants to buy young people's blood so he can transfuse it into himself. It's gruesome as hell, but I think the whole impetus behind this is our article that came out in December, that our own Defense Department, or the DNI, Defense Wing, I forgot what the acronym is, but if you Google Chinese super soldiers, our own military defense said, look, China is doing experiments right now with their soldiers genetically using CRISPR-type treatments. They're basically doing super soldier experiments right now. And they're sort of huge fit about it. They're really, we're acting really angry about it. But if that's true, then they're using what scientists know internationally about, the best optimum, Olympic athlete type DNA. So of course, our own government having access, in secret operations to alien DNA, that's the only way, you get one notch above whatever athlete DNA they're going to give to most Chinese soldiers. So it kind of gives them the motivation to do those types of experiments, or like what happened to me in my lab to alter my eyes. And I did have a treatment, like I discussed last time, where and I don't want to retread the whole thing. You can watch the first video. I go into detail. But they also gave me a treatment for my major muscle groups, like a stem cell transplant, essentially, which reduces pain, reduces fatigue. And it's important for me, as crazy as this stuff sounds, it's important for me to get this out there because I do believe there'll be other people reporting this, other vets, especially in the special forces communities, other people who are pilots. Because one thing I got from this, they really want to use this for pilots as well as helicopter pilots, jet pilots, you name it. Because the idea is if you have a really hard crash, you're going to feel less pain. You can still break a bone or something. But you're less, you're basically creating a whole army of Tony Montanas. Not necessarily Wolverines, but definitely Tony Montanas,
sure.
Which is scarier in some senses. Without the cocaine,
Well, that's no fun.
Right. So I think the truth, you look at channels like Super Soldier Talk, I think some of that is influenced by popular culture. Like suddenly everyone on there is a Hulk. Michael Jack, all these other guys, they're all remembering that
they're hulking
part of the
out,
project.
man. They're hulking out too. Yeah.
But this is like the worst thing, even if you have that technology, which I pretty much guarantee you nobody does because it doesn't even make physical sense. You don't want to make someone bigger on the battlefield. They're just a target. I mean, ever since the David and Goliath, if you're bigger and noticeable, you're just going to attract more projectiles flying at you. But secondly, it's one of those things that's so obviously influenced by popular culture and not really consistent with even other people who've had my labs and had experiences like that, and not my experience either. And there is this contamination effect of popular culture that influences people. And I'll tell you, when I had that procedure with these sheets of muscle that they transplanted into me, I had never seen that in any movie. In fact, after I woke up after that procedure, I went, wait a minute, you cannot transplant muscle. That's stupid. I've never heard of that. I've never seen that. I Google it, and I find out, the military 5 years ago was taking pig bladder muscle, reconditioning it in the sheets, just like I saw, and then putting it on the troops who have had gashes of muscle taken out by mortar fire or gunfire, and within a day, their mobility is like fully back to normal. I'm like, but subconsciously, I didn't know you could transplant muscle before that experience, so there was nothing in me to give that subconscious seed. So I thought it was that stupid. If muscle transplants are true, all these people who are at the gym, injecting steroids to just go to Mexico and get the muscle transplant. But it's really like a sheet they put over it, and it melts into it with the stem cells in it. You can look it up. Look up pig bladder, military, muscle, and you'll see the procedure, how they do it. It's crazy, too. Imagine taking a pig's bladder, they recondition it somehow, they open you up, they put on the muscle, it dissolves into it, and this big wound you had, your muscles fixed. It sounds like it's ridiculous, but it works. And I think one of the reasons it works is they are using that is alien tech, because it's such a jump from what anyone in biology would know, and it works so seamlessly and so quickly. It just sounds very suspicious that they did something that, like all this genetic alteration they're talking about right now, what they're doing in China, what they're talking about doing here with these, go to CVS, pay, just get your superhero vaccine if you want it. Some of this is alien tech, because changing DNA isn't supposed to be that easy. It's really not. I know we have CRISPR, we've been looking at it for 10, 15 years, but suddenly it's getting like a bad sci-fi movie, but they're actually able to do it. I do think this is alien. They cheated by using alien tech. That's how they made such a jump from what 20 years ago a biology teacher would have told you is ridiculous, and now they're doing it.
Well, isn't that shortchanging the human race, though? When people, say that, it's kind of like the people who say, well, aliens had to help build the pyramids because there's no way humans could have done it. It's kind of shortchanging humanity. You don't have faith that like medical technology just evolves over time, and maybe they made some breakthroughs in 20 or 30 years since old technology was in widespread use.
Well, there's just certain like tropes they have in sci-fi and comic books and movies that they're always kind of ridiculous. Every time someone has a lab accident, suddenly they're like a one-man army. It's like that in the Marvel movies. Like, there's 20 different ways to become bulletproof and have the strength of 100 people. You slip on a banana peel, doesn't matter. Like, there's 100 ways for it to happen, and it's like, you get kind of skeptical. And also just my own experience of like trying supplements and things. I've never did steroids or anything, but I've taken, the workout supplements, and all of them have side effects. And I'll tell you, since they altered my eyes, I didn't get pink eye. I had pink eye maybe once when I was 7, one time, barely remember it. But since they did the thing to my eyes, it gives me boosted night vision, and I'm light sensitive, but also restored my color vision as a side effect. I now get pink eye twice a damn year, and it is awful. I mean, it is like getting stabbed in the eye. It's not allergy, it's full-blown pink eye. So whatever they did genetically for my eyes, they're now more vulnerable to bacterial infection, which tells me it wasn't just an alteration of the optic nerve, like a targeted like one gene. They probably did something, grafted some alien genetics in there, which again sounds like, well, why did the military do that? Because you got the Chinese. They're going to be using again, look this up, Chinese super soldiers, and I'm not bashing China, but I'm just saying if you're in the military, you're like, okay, how do we get one step above these guys? Oh, we've got these alien labs, we've got alien tech. That's how you get one step above them. And
well, I do know there's been crazy research into creating super soldiers. Did you know that Stalin and the Soviet Union experimented with creating chimpanzee human hybrids that they would use as soldiers because of the strength of the chimpanzees?
yeah, I've read.
That is a crazy story, and it's real. They tried to do that. They tried to create a human chimpanzee hybrid to use as a soldier.
Well, it's funny. There's another reptilian abductee who did fantastic artwork, has a website, wrote a great book of experiences. His name's Ken Bateman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people have run into him. He disappeared from the internet years ago. He's getting harassed by too many people, harassed by the government, harassed by New Age weirdos. And he's a manager at like a Home Depot. He's like, you know what? To hell with this. And I don't blame him. He's a very, very down-to-earth guy, but he had lots of reptilian experiences, and the reptilians were pretty pushy with him because they're like, hey, look, you're from this royal, you're from this reptilian bloodline. And you see reptilians do this to so many abductees. You're like, hey, here's where your bloodline started. You're kind of, our property, you kind of owe us, and you can't fight it. But he had experience in northeastern California. He was taken to this ranch. It's called the Modoc Plateau or region up there in northeast California, and it was a sort of palatial mansion type estate, and it was mostly humans. The cover also was there's an ostrich farm on the property, but this was owned by a Draco reptilian. There was a full albino, like 9-foot Draco reptilian there. He had lots of human henchmen around to help run the ranch, run the day-to-day operation.
Wait a minute. Let's back up here. So there's a ranch that a white Draco reptilian 9-foot tall alien owns, and he has human underlings.
Yeah, including the sheriff, who, he basically, it's one of those smaller towns where he had lots of influence on the area financially. And it's funny because his underboss literally would wear an iron cross, like a bolo tie, at work as the sheriff, which is really in your face. But then again, some of these small towns, I've watched enough Dateline and true crime shows to know small towns get pretty weird. Not usually with reptilians, but the interesting thing about this Draco reptilian, he clearly was alive in the 19th century. He had the lever action rifle he carried with him everywhere, and his bandolier of ammo, and he wore a sombrero, which makes sense, I guess, if you're sensitive to the sun. But that shows he probably, had some kind of involvement with Mexico or Mexican blood, or maybe the Incans or the Aztecs, or God knows what else. But the point I'm getting to is this was a breedery. This ranch double was a breedery that would sell eggs to our own military. And they would take abductees in, milk you for reproductive fluid, essentially, and they had females on premises that they would, with the turkey baster. I'm trying to keep it PG here. Not doing great, but getting to the point. This was essentially a breedery where they were selling eggs to our military. As crazy as that sounds, believe it or not.
So wait, they're selling our military reptilian babies in egg form?
And apparently, you'd think if you mix reptilian and human, it would always. These were dinosaurid female reptilians, though, and there are dinosaurid reptilians here. Not a lot of them. And I'm not talking about the ones from the Carrie Cassidy, the rap, whatever the Mark Richards. But there are dinosaurid. People see. When I mean they literally look like dinosaurs. I shouldn't say dinosaurid. I should say they are intelligent. If you look at it, you think, oh my God, that's a freaking, like a dinosaur. But these ones don't actually, they look more like an Allosaurus or something than a raptor. So I would not call them raptors, and they're bigger. These guys, even the females, some of the females are like 9-10 feet tall. So these are not the same race. I'm not going to them, I'm not, endorsing the Mark Richards story or anything. I'm not attacking it right now. We're not going to go off in that direction here. But there's another famous researcher. I'm sure you've seen some of his stuff. He does some good talks. James Bartley. Have you heard of James Bartley?
Yes.
Okay, he's talked to numerous abductees who have also been part of the breeding programs that sell reptilians to our military. In some cases, it's Masonic. They're breeding reptilians and they sell them to your military pays some elements our military pay for. And I don't know how that handshake, if there was some member of the military who was a Mason and he's like, hey, I could, run sort of a back channel and we could take some of these reptilians that are breeding and we can sell them to them. When you look at human trafficking in general, you look at some of the things that go on here, overseas, South America. I don't know if it's. I shouldn't call it human trafficking because it's not exactly kidnapping or, some of the worst, more malicious aspects of that are really present. But this story is going somewhere really important.
Okay.
I'll show
Okay.
When he was taking the mansion, this reptilian had this mansion set up. He had, very organized. He had a gym section for his men. He had the showers and another room. So it's like inside he almost set up like it was a barracks or something. Which that's the sort of reptilian mentality. You give them a mansion, they turn it into like a James Bond villain barracks. But he had let me just take a sip of water real quick here, Marco. Let me take a sip of water, Marco Rubio style, real fast. This is a little hot out here.
Yeah, I'm heating up here in my office as well.
It's all right. So he takes him to his briefing room, essentially where he briefs his men. He's got like a whiteboard, a chalkboard, and in that room, this guy throughout his mansion has mannequins of sort of figures from history, like hybrid figures from history that he's related to. This is a common thing of Draco reptilians, where they have statues or flags or things representing different human bloodlines they are involved with, or different leaders they're involved with. And the most prominent one next to his whiteboard is a mannequin of Amelia Earhart. Or a mannequin dressed up like, the goggles and everything. It's clearly Amelia Earhart. And that really got me thinking. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do some research into Amelia Earhart. If she was a reptilian hybrid, she would have stomach problems. Because a lot of people who have a lot of reptilian DNA, they have very sensitive stomachs. Happened to me as well after my first abductions, whatever kind of genetic activation they did on me. And they tell people, all right, we're taking the recessive reptilian DNA and we're activating it. And the first thing that happened is my stomach went from never sensitive to just stupidly sensitive. And that's definitely not a superpower, having a sensitive stomach. But anyways, I look up Amelia Earhart and her stomach, and guess what? She had a ridiculously sensitive stomach. One time she was invited to the White House.
So wait, come on, Matt. Like she has a sensitive stomach, so she must be a reptilian alien?
But she, among all these other reptilian hybrids that this guy was related to throughout history, she was the most prominent one. Next was, whiteboard where he breathed his men.
And we had a question. We had several questions from the audience, and a lot of people would like to know why you stopped being a police officer. If you could tell us about that briefly.
I had an off-duty car accident. It wasn't my fault. I was rear-ended.
And by the way, people were also asking in the live chat, and I did verify his employment, and so he was sort of discharged, or you resigned based on a car accident and the inability to do some of the physical stuff that you would have to do as a police officer for a while, right?
Yeah, it was a point in my life after Katrina and everything, living through that. I'm like, I did that for 2 years. I was going to come back up here, go into real estate, go into business with a friend of mine from high school. And my neck recovered. It took a while, but it was sort of those points in life where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go do something else. Katrina was rough on me. I stayed through it. In the middle of downtown, I've got that video. I of me on 60 Minutes getting sworn in the middle of, so I can prove I was there in the city during Katrina, in the middle of it. And I want to stay because of the reptilian. I have to thank the reptilians for that training, the mall training, like, a month and a half, 2 months before that. Because, believe it or not, the other people who were there, like me, who were halfway through the academy, when they swore us in, a few days after the storm, but we were halfway through the academy when the storm hit. But the point is, the recruits who left were allowed to come back. If you were a cop and you left the city, you got fired. But if you were a recruit and you left, they ordered us to leave. And there was basically a mutiny among recruits because a lot of us recruits were veterans, and we refused to leave. We're like, we're not leaving. You're ordering us to leave. We're going to stay. We're going to keep staying. We're going to keep working. And so I could have left and come back with no consequence. But I did stay. Not to like brag about it, because I think without that training I had from the reptilians, it's very tempting.
But you do understand that. It seems like that's one problem that I've had with your story is like, I don't want to say it's crazy, but it is. I mean, like, so they took you and a bunch of other police officers to be trained with reptilian aliens. In a mall,
after dark, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, police, military, yeah. That's, the crowd control, at the time, the idea of would we ever have to use reptilians for crowd control seemed kind of absurd, but if you look at the riots we had a year ago, I mean, you look at what happened, and that was pretty intense. I mean, I can't name a single city in this country that didn't get overwhelmed, where the police just completely got steamrolled. It was, you could see why they would, if they have access to reptilians, why they would want to use them as a resource. It's actually very sensible now. It's, at the time, 2005, it's like, okay, this is kind of extreme. Why would we got National Guard, you got police, giving better guns, giving beanbag guns, giving pep. Now we see what happens when you really get some bad civil unrest, and what happens is you get near anarchy. And,
yeah, we could see it in the videos. It was descended into anarchy. And again, a lot of people are asking about what evidence do you have, being a former police officer. I'm sure you value the importance of evidence.
Yeah, I mean, the video...
We've been over this in the first interview, but to reiterate briefly for people in the live chat that are saying, one of the things that I found with experiencers, for years I said, I don't really want to talk to any of them. And then I changed my mind and I started to talk to them. And what's frustrating for me with experiencers is that what they have to offer you is the experience, and usually very little else in the form of evidentiary support of the things that would support them really having this experience. So, what has been your situation?
Well, as far as the I mean, I can prove I was in New Orleans during Katrina, because the 60 Minutes thing really helps in that sense. That's the only video evidence I have. It zoomed in on my face, getting sworn in. But as far as the experience side of proving it, well, I mean, I do have what happened to my eyes, which is inexplicable. I have, the cooperation of a whole bunch of other police and military. If you, go to Joe Montaldo, ICAR, and he's a little hard to reach sometimes. He's been on Ancient Aliens a few times. People out there might know who he is, but I'm not the only person who reported being taken there. Some of the other people there were military. Some of them were police. A lot of them were NOPD. A couple of them were detectives. One of them was one of the highest ranking people in the NOPD. But as far as like hard evidence, the thing that happened really a couple years ago with a lifetime of color vision deficit, of being partially colorblind and now not being colorblind, that's a really skeptically that's a really far bridge to jump. Like, how do you explain? There's no scientific explanation to why.
Well, but don't you think that sometimes it's possible for the body to repair these deficits? Because I had a brain aneurysm and my eye was completely paralyzed for 6 months, maybe more, after the aneurysm, and I was completely cross-eyed. It was terrible. But eventually the eye sort of came back. It didn't come back 100%, but I can function now, and I have some degree of stereo vision left. Even though one eye is, that eye remains to be like half paralyzed, so it's very weak. But it sort of righted itself, and I didn't think, that happened because of aliens. I just thought the body will eventually try to fix itself, right? I mean, you're convinced that it was because of an alien injection. That's what cured you.
Yeah. It's a genetic deficit because there's a lot of people who desperately try to find a way to fix it because it prevents them from being like professional jumbo jet pilots and whatnot. So there's a lot of people who scramble. Is there some pill I can take, some surgery, some... No, if you're genetically born partially colorblind, you literally in your eye don't have the right amount of rods or cones, and there's nothing. At no point in life is it just gonna just spring into life and fix itself. If you're born like that, it's gonna be like that to the day you die. You take vitamin A pills, eat carrots. That's how color vision deficits are. It's a genetic thing if you have it. So if it happened to me, it would be a very ridiculously 1 in a 550 million.
Yeah, and I have to say, I meant to talk to an ophthalmologist or an eye doctor and talk about your, spontaneously being cured of color vision, of being colorblind, but I have not done that. So I don't know what the process is like for people, or if there's a way to repair that or a way to improve it. I think I recall that some people have special glasses for that or something. Is that right?
There's glasses you can use to cheat the test, I think I've heard about. Yeah, I'm definitely not wearing it. I'm not wearing the contacts, but I think there is some kind of glasses or something that will cheat. You're wearing like 3D glasses from the 50s or something that look like. And I guess there's people who've tried that when they because there's some branches of military service, as I said before, for professional pilots that are much more strict on color vision. Now, in my case, when I did the NOPD color test, they intentionally make it very easy. It's not the Ishihara little dots. It's like they put a bunch of colors in front of you. Well, what color is this? Oh, yellow, green. But most people with color vision deficits, if you put the full rainbow in front of them, in a second they'll tell you what they are. It's when you look at the gradients between red, the subtle gradients that they can't really get and mix together, but they can see all the colors. Just it's duller. Like imagine you go to a TV and turn the color down like 30% or 20%, and that's what a person is. I know that now. Now that I see colors normal, I'm like, holy crap! My whole life, I was like, I see colors, I see them fine, and I realized no, I wasn't seeing them. I was seeing them, in a very dull, a limited way, and it was, metaphorical. The fact that you think you're seeing something. Like a Plato's cave analogy, you've never seen color vision, and you get it, you're like, holy crap, so this is how bright color is. And now it just annoys that when I go shopping at the store now, the color, all the uncoordinated colors, small labels on the shelves, it's like a, disco or something. It's ridiculous. It's almost nauseating now, because I'm not used to it.
Well, we're just past an hour now. I wonder if you'd be willing to take questions from the live chat, because I've seen a bunch of good questions. So everybody with a question for Matt or myself, please do put them in all capital letters, so that we know that it's a question for either me or Matt. And we want to give you an opportunity. People have questions. I don't want to be too rough on Matt. He and I talked about this both off and on air last time. I have an interest in all of this, and thought that we could start interviewing experiencers and alien abductees and seeing commonalities or seeing what we could learn from their experiences. So, Freebird is telling me time to play hardball. What I will say is that I've got a problem with just the process of like, okay, we're going to get these police officers to be trained by reptilian aliens in crowd control. It just seems like there's got to be better ways to do that than to break out the aliens.
We were what you call Op 4. Like there's another recruit in our class who used to be a SEAL, and he actually got recalled to go be. It's called Op 4, where you're more of a training aid. So you're acting out the part of a police officer. So it's not so much that they were training us, they were being trained, but we were like, the National Guard does this sometimes. They'll go on the paper and they'll hire actors to play rioters, and you show up at the military base, they pay you whatever, and you dress up. And it's the same. So we were more like training aids for them, playing the role. Like, okay, here's police officers, here's civilians, and so they weren't training us. We were just sort of, living accessories to the training environment. You can't. So that, just to be clear on that.
Well, I guess that's better than training mannequins, but still, one of the things that I've experienced, Matt, is that there's this nonchalance when people tell some of their stories, and of like, or almost nonchalance and a not very much acknowledgement of how fantastical the experience that they had is. Because to a normal person, like, okay, suddenly they just said, we're gonna take you to this abandoned mall and we're gonna train you with reptilian aliens. It's like, what? Wait, what? What did you? What?
Well, it came out years later though. The FBI was going in the malls after dark and doing anti-terrorism training. They rent the mall.
I have seen that. I have seen several articles on that, which is strange and weird, but.
Well, it's a great place.
That's strange and weird enough, Matt. But then when you add reptilian aliens into that story, it gets, it gets more crazy. Like, Well,
I think from the perspective of our military, reptilians, the only great advantage they offer over human troops is in close range combat. Medium range combat, long range, not that much of a benefit. Close range, tremendous benefits. So they're sitting there thinking, we've got access to these reptilians through our treaties and our deals and, these other, what do we do with them? What do we do? In the Marvel movies and the sci-fi movies, if you're really strong, you run around the battlefield, punching guns out of people's hands. In real life, that doesn't, that doesn't work. So even though the fact that reptilians are very strong and very fast, really, crowd control is the best thing you could use them for, because medium range combat is just going to be, maybe they could take a few more, instead of taking one bullet to put them down, it'll take 3, 5, 6 to put them down, it's, 4 maybe. So that's the best, that's where you want to use them. And the only sort of place where having better skill in close quarters combat really would matter would be crowd control. And also they're scary. They scare me.
Well, I could imagine, 9-foot tall reptile man, 9-foot tall lizard man would be kind of scary to see. And we have a question from Pragmagic from the live chat. He asked, did the knowledge of reptilian enterprises happen due to your experience, or was it a fascination before? That's a good question.
The knowledge of reptilian enterprises?
Yeah, like, I think he's asking, were you interested in reptilians and reptilian aliens before the experience, or did you start looking into them after the experience? Like, did you have an interest in that subject before you allegedly saw them and interacted with them?
When I first, when I occasionally listen to our bell or something and you hear about reptilians, it did strike sort of a chord of familiarity. Like, how do I know these? I couldn't shake. I know these things are real, but I don't know how I know they're real. That was a very situation, like deja vu. Like, wait a minute, why do I know these guys are real? But I can't remember why. I don't know, genetic memory probably. A lot of reptilian entities talk about that. You get these genetic recalls of having some of their blood in you, which is, generally you're not going to be a reptilian entity unless you're from one of these bloodlines that you have. In my case, it came through, my grandma's side, on my mom's side very specifically. And she didn't talk about abductions literally until right before she was.
Yeah, so you're saying that this is a family thing too, that you've had other family members before you that experienced these sort of alien abduction events.
Yeah, and they even, like in her case, she was trained to be a pilot on one of the ships, which happens with Greys too, with Grey abductees too, where they train you how to fly ships. But circling almost back to the Amelia Earhart thing, that would explain why she was such a good pilot if she had other training.
Yeah, I suppose we have that girl asks, did you speak to the other trainees? I missed the original live explaining your experience. Yeah, and what was that conversation like? You're standing around with a bunch of other guys with reptilian aliens. Like, did you talk about this while it was going on? Did anybody say this is effing crazy, or you just did the training and didn't talk about this elephant in the room, so to speak, of aliens being in the same room with you guys?
Well, it was a real chaotic circus in that mall. You had people, the reptilians were practicing frisking people. They were shooting their weapons at pre-designated targets to see the sparking effect, because that's really what acts as the stun gun type of impact on people. You shoot an object you don't hit them directly. You shoot an object near them, like a set-up garbage can or a lamppost, and it just bursts into sparks. Just like when you've seen riots recently when they throw stun grenades, except this is essentially a laser stun grenade that turns anything you shoot. It's like when you imagine putting a ball of aluminum foil in the microwave. That's that sort of sparky. So there's a lot of chaos, and there wasn't really time to sit there and look at someone next to you and say anything. So I didn't recognize anybody. We didn't recognize each other. And there's also, I remember this feeling of are these people all military? Are some of these people military? Are all of them military? Are some of these people hybrid? So there's no trust of this person next to me is a fellow abductee. It's just what the hell? Can I trust any of these? What the? I don't know. So, yeah, there was that. I guess if we'd been stuck there for hours or days or something, you'd open up. But in that kind of situation, no one was talking to anybody. I mean, there's one reptilian Joe Montano's talked about on his show when he's spoken about this case, who this one abductee there was being hurried along by a reptilian, and the reptilian was hurrying him in English and telling him to hurry up. And this guy said, you know what? Yeah, he said, F you. And the reptilian just instantly nipped him right there on the collarbone. Like I got nipped in my collarbone during that training abduction. But again, I go back and watch the first. I don't want to retread the whole thing. But to simplify the answer to the question, no, there was no chatter, there was no talking. It was like, what the hell? Yeah, it was very, yeah. I think there's a really good series on Netflix everyone should watch. It reminds me so much of my Katrina experiences, even some of my reptilian experiences. And it's called Black Summer on Netflix. Have you seen Black Summer on Netflix?
No, I have not seen it. No.
It's one of the best shows you will ever see. It's about this, the initial stages of sort of this collapse in the country during a zombie outbreak.
Oh no, you know what? I've seen something about it, but I haven't seen it yet. Sure. It's
so realistic. It's done just based on. It reminded me. The first episode of the first season reminded me so much of the early days of Katrina. I can't even. The sound design, that and the movie Dunkirk. Have you seen the movie Dunkirk from the guy, Christopher Nolan?
That I've seen.
Okay. Sure. Oh yeah, Dunkirk. God, being stuck on the beach, being stuck. That of all the war movies, that gave me the most clearest, almost flashbacks. And the final one, of course, I got to recommend is that movie about the Benghazi attack. What's the name of that Benghazi movie they did a couple years ago?
I'm not sure. But
13 hours, something.
Listen, we have more questions in the live chat.
Let me get to the question. Sorry to keep going on. Get to the question. Yeah.
Okay, so V in the live chat asks, do you still encounter aliens of any kind today?
Yeah. I mean, the last, and this is an encounter. Good thing you brought that up, because I did not get to this in the first encounter, or in the first interview we did together. And this was, I marked the date down. This was January 27th, 2020. And this was like not too long after I did that interview on, Project Camelot, which got, where the channel got taken down. But it's like 2 a.m, and I'm coming to, and I'm being yelled at I mean, not yelled at telepathically. I'm being yelled at like there's a reptilian over me, inches away from me, just, really intensely yelling at me about something called the third agency, like in a very dramatic, like in a very serious tone. And I wake up, I start inching away from them just instinctively. Just like, what the hell? Is there a fire? Is it like, why are you yelling at me? And within seconds, I'm getting kind of angry because it's like, what the hell? Like, you're not giving me, you're just third agency, and it's almost like you got the third agency. And that's all I remember is that part of it, because literally within like 10 seconds later, I get this sudden move. I need to go to sleep, and I do. But during that brief moment when I woke up, when I was awake, that wasn't telepathic. He was there. I could feel his breath hitting me. He's yelling at me about the thing called the third agency. And it's like, I had to do so much research to figure out what the hell he's talking about. It's clearly some kind of, insider code or lingo for something. And it turns out that's the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's like an insider speak for the DIA. And it's funny because...
Another good question, Pragmatic is, how much David Icke did you study before your experience? Is that too on the nose? Were you familiar with David Icke and his theories before your experience? Did you read any of his books before your experience?
I did actually read one of his books at Borders or Barnes and Noble or something for free. Yeah, but I'd say my experiences are not that, because I have not. Well, let me put it this way: I think he goes way too far as how pushing the idea that reptilian influence is just everywhere and they're controlling everything and they're eating people like chicken, and it's over the top, and that's based on my experience. If what David Icke was saying is true, the reptilians wouldn't even allow the military to use them. The crowd control is a rough business. I mean, you have reptilians in that mall preparing to be stabbed and get heal their stabbed wounds. And that is a likely wound of them, to suffer when fighting humans, because a baseball bat's not going to work that well. They will besides gunfire, the main injury they'll suffer is, when you're fighting, crowds of looters, is someone running up and stabbing you with a pocket knife and running away. You see a lot of attacks like that in Israel. Now, I'm not going to get political. I'm not being anti-Palestinian or anything. I'm just saying hit-and-run stabbing attacks are a big threat to reptilians. And we see hit-and-run stabbing attacks to this day. You'd think in this day you would still see them, but in some places that's still kind of thing that's done.
Yeah, next, Brad Gray asks, what does your family think about what happened to you?
The only other person who's had similar experiences in my family is my little brother. Although he believes he only remembers some grays from his experience. Like, he doesn't like talking about it, though. He's not, I've met other people who are the same way, or in private, they'll talk to me about my experiences, but even then, they don't enjoy it. They don't like talking about it. But I don't really relate a lot of my experiences to my family. I'm just not, I don't need validation from them or anything, and I don't really care. It's not that I don't care about my family. I just, I think that past a certain stage of adulthood, you can't let your family, decide your personality or what you believe, what you don't believe. You honor and respect them, but as far as your views on things, that's you. You don't live in the shadow of whoever your family members are. That's the saddest thing, by the way. There's so many people in politics where their whole legacy is just, whoever their dad was, and how about great their dad is, and it's like, that's the most pathetic. You should like your dad, but being this perpetual, always on the coattails of whatever dad's doing and cheerleading him well into adulthood, middle age, God knows what. It's like, that's not a healthy way to live. As far as, that's just my opinion. As far as opinions, you got to be your own person.
Yeah, and we talked about this in a previous interview, but have you done any kind of psychotherapy about your experiences, or are you just absolutely certain that what you experienced was real and not any kind of mental condition, breakdown, or delusion?
I'm convinced it was real. I don't do do LSD, marijuana. I don't. Not to say marijuana would make you happy, because I'm not attacking people who do. I don't, drink heavily. I drink maybe once every few months socially, like for one night. I've never had a DUI or anything either. I don't have any criminal record of any kind. So no, I don't believe it's not consistent really with any kind of mental illness. I don't have voices or anything. I don't, hallucinate. In my experiences, sometimes I only have experience for like a whole year or 2 years, and then the Reptilians show up and they need to do X or Y, and it's like, okay, we'll do X or Y. And that's the kind of thing with Reptilians. The gaps between abductions are pretty irregular. Whereas if you're a gray abductee primarily, they'll come a lot more consistently, because grays are just in their personality, being bug insects are kind of OCD. They always want to check on your health, check your blood pressure, check your stress, come back, check again. The Reptilians are more like they sort of barge into your life, and then you see them again in 8 months. Hey, I need you for something. And that is always their attitude, even if I'm at the teeth, that sort of barging in. It's very abrupt, the way that style. I don't know if you ever saw Barbara Lamb was talking about how once fully awake in her house, fully awake, a Reptilian just walks in. They go, hey, how's it going? Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear that from her, but I did a pretty contentious interview with her over the book Hybrid Humans, or Meet the Hybrids, it was called. I sort of challenged her to get me DNA samples, and I would get them analyzed, and she wouldn't or could not do that because they were afraid the government was going to come after them or whatever. And I offered to sign an NDA that I wouldn't release the results of the DNA tests to any government official or anyone else, just me and the experiencer.
You were going to swap it out for one of those Simon Parks NDAs, which isn't it's just his idea of an NDA.
Yeah, well, but the point is that she wouldn't agree to any kind of scientific study that would either confirm or deny all the claims she made in her book, which made me very skeptical. So they're just stories then.
Well, yeah, I understand, because abductees do get harassed, and Reptilian abductees get harassed even worse, because they know that these Reptilians have given us training, and we're a little more dangerous than gray abductees potentially. So yeah, I can understand paranoia among abductees to share. And I've been warned, by the way, don't keep, samples or tests or I've had similar warnings from people, and I get it, because abductees do get harassed if they go forward and when they talk. I talked to someone from my Discovery Channel, someone from the History Channel, and during the interview with the Discovery Channel guy, it's one of the things where I years ago, I was going to potentially go on a few different shows, and they contacted me and a few other abductees, and we're all lined up to go on, and then at the last minute, everyone backs out because they're afraid it's going to ruin their career, and you're not going to get paid anything, and that's really, people ask, well, where's all these abductees? Well, the shows that will have you on aren't going to pay you a dime, and they put your face out there, and then it messes up your career prospects. And very few people are willing to do that. And a lot of Reptilian abductees, too, tend to be in military or police sectors, and that's even more sensitive to get your career ruined. So you look at the Herbert, I'm sure you've heard of this case, the Herbert Schirmer abduction. He was a police officer in the late 60s, abducted by Reptilians on duty. SCHIRMER. You can look it up, and it just ruined his career afterwards. It destroyed him. People mocked him so much. Even though he became chief of police, he had to resign, and that's really tragic. I think his experience happened. It wasn't a hostile experience. He's brought aboard this Reptilian ship, and they showed him the star. It's kind of similar to the whole. The one similarity to the Benny and Barney Hill thing was the whole showing the star map.
Yeah.
So they.
Listen, we're coming up on an hour and a half, so I think we're going to wrap things up here, but we'll take a very short break so I can remind people how they can support the show. There's a money button down there. You can sign up for Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or make a PayPal donation from either the About section of our channel or from the description in the video. Gives instructions on how to do that. Matt, you're going to stick around we'll just do a few minute bumper here, and then we'll try to wrap things up. Any other questions for Matt, please put them in the live chat in all caps. And so we'll be right back, friends. 1 second. Here we go. Okay, so let me find my bumper here. So I found some comical ways to remind people to send us some money. And what I've done is borrow some televangelists to tell you how you can help us to praise the cash, friends. So if you'd like to help us praise the cash, get those in. We'll be right back, friends.
You're watching Truthseekers. Praise the cash, praise the cash.
Here's what I want you to do. If the Lord is speaking to you, ushers, bring some baskets down. Just leave them there. I'm not finished. I got one more point to make. This is what I want you to do. Thank you, Miss Marguerite. I brought her because I want you to understand that the work must continue. This is not a plea for money. It's a plea for partnership so that we can be what we're supposed to be. I just need 497 people to say, I'll do 300.
I like being able to help others. I like being able to fulfill my dreams, and it takes money to do what we're doing. That's why God gives you influence to help the world, to make it a better place. We don't ask for money, and people send in millions of dollars to help us keep the broadcast on the air. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a nice place to live and being blessed. And money should never be the focus of your life. If that's all you're doing, that's shallow. It should be to be a blessing to others.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
What can I say, folks? Good help is hard to find, and there is a kind and generous $2 super chat donation from FGraph72 saying, share the love, truth seekers. Thank you, FGraph72, for your kindness, your generosity, and your support, and for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Oh, you've heard of a cash cow. We have a cash clown here, Matt. And every time somebody sends a super chat, our cash clown says, praise the cash.
I've seen that. I saw that in your last.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have a cash clown. That's my personal take. Yeah, viewer supported show here. So we do what we can to provide this type of content. So if you like it, please do support us. So Matt, what is next for you after this incredible experience? What do you think is next? Are you just going to keep continuing to try to study this phenomenon and understand what it is that happened to you?
I mean, that's really all I can do. I follow, like I said earlier, the Confessionals podcast and the Phantoms and Monsters blog, and whenever there's a new report of abduction, it's generally going to appear there. So it's a good place to sort of keep abreast of the situation. But like I said at the beginning of the interview, most of the stuff I do on the internet or watch has nothing to do with aliens. So I'm not like obsessively going over it. So I probably miss something occasionally. I'm not, but there are a few good places like that where they do collate freshly reported abduction sightings and whatnot. I just grabbed some water here, by the way. I'm going to do another Marco Rubio's. Let me just sip real fast.
Sure, whatever you need to do. And someone else here, Ray Carr, asked a very important question, because you said there were other, police officers in this training with you, and Ray Carr is asking, is there anyone else that will back up your story? Have you contacted them? Have you talked to the other people that were at this reptilian alien training session and try to get them to go on the record with you?
I tried. I drove back down to New Orleans in like 2011, and I tried very desperately to get any of these other guys to come forward, but they were all still on the job. In many cases, they were promoted or they're still in the military. And if it wasn't for my car accident, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. That is just one of those moments where I sort of rethought my career and direction in life. And if I was still in some military or police capacity, even with trying to use anonymity, someone would probably figure out who I am or track me down, and we would never be talking right now. So I get it, why it's hard to get anyone else. Maybe with all this public push for making the UFO issue less of a stigma, maybe one of them will come forward. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that the new Dolan book does have a case so similar to mine from the '60s. That's a good sign, because I know this kind of thing has happened before. It's happened to other people. It wasn't just this one night in one mall with one group of people. The military doesn't do one-offs like that, especially something that big. So it's definitely part of something or a pattern. And I would recommend people, I'm not 100% endorsing, how Dylan does everything, but the Alien Agenda's book, it covers, Grays and cases and Nordic cases and reptilian cases. I think it really takes a very, a broad view of the whole, tries not to be too biased like almost everyone else does. But speaking of bias, the Herbert Sherman thing brings something up, and that is Richard Gere's insistence that aliens, they don't have weapons in space, you can't bring weapons anywhere.
Well, you said Richard Gere. I think you mean Stephen Greer. Yeah, you said Richard Gere. I was like, wait, Richard Gere's talking about aliens?
Grieco.
Yeah.
Yes, alien researcher Richard Grieco. No, it's Stephen Greer. He's making this idea that all these aliens are peaceful. You can't have weapons in space. I agree that aliens do not like nuclear weapons, and they have shut them down. They have warned people about them. But guess what? I own a few firearms. I almost always have a knife on me, but I hate nuclear weapons too. I think they should have never been invented. The fact that aliens don't like nukes, it's just common sense. It doesn't mean they're all pacifists. I mean, in the Sherman abduction, he's walking around this reptilian ship with his revolver on his damn hip. They didn't take it away from him. At one point, if you read the details of the abduction, one of them made a comment like, people are always shooting those guns at our ship, but it's not going to do anything. Which is true. People do open fire and UFOs of handguns and rifles, and maybe you'll make a dent, but you're not going to take down a UFO for 38 Special. But the point being, Greer is really extrapolating alien dislike of nukes into alien pacifism, and those two things have nothing to do with each other.
Well, that I agree with.
Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I dislike nuclear weapons as well, but I consider them perhaps a necessary evil. It's kind of like if I was in a fight and the other guy had a baseball bat, I would want a baseball bat too. So this is just, our arms have just increased throughout history until now we can literally destroy our planet. So
yeah, it was a mistake to ever make them, and we did it in a rush because of World War II. Really, a lot of the scientists even working on the nukes were like, "What are we doing? We shouldn't be doing this." But if you're living in that era of the height of the panic of the great,
there wasn't Oppenheimer. He said, "I have become death, the destroyer of worlds."
It is. Even a limited nuclear exchange. Let's say a very light limited nuclear exchange would be the worst environmental disaster the world's ever seen. Forget, your global, all the bombs going up. Just a light exchange would be like a horror show. So I guess, but, I agree with it. They should be trying to shut them down. I think theoretically everyone on Earth should agree to get rid of them because, okay, maybe we'll bring back trench combat or God knows what, or tank combat. But the worst, infantry combat can't compare to, even a small nuclear war in terms of the damage of civilians and the nature and God knows what. But
sure, yeah.
not to get too far off, I just wanted to squeeze that in about
Yeah, I guess we're going to wrap things up here. Clay's having a short bumper if you want to stay online for a moment. I want to thank each and every audience member for joining us and indulging me. You see, I could do some of these things offline and just have this conversation privately, but I thought it better to share it with my friends here who may have a similar interest in some of these subjects. So I want to thank our guest tonight, Matt. I want to thank our incredible audience from all around the world, international audience. I'm so proud of that. So until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Campion. Good night and God bless all of you.